I love fighting games. Normally I love single-player story-driven experiences, but there is just something so much fun about turning on a fighting game, selecting your character, and performing a sick combo or whatnot. But one thing that is very hype about fighting games is the guest characters. Not all fighting games have them, nor do they need them, but when it happens, it's awesome. And that's what I'm counting down today. Now these are specifically guest characters as opposed to weird characters that seem out of place. You know, these are guests. These are characters from other games or media appearing in this game. I don't know if I needed to explain that to you actually. And what I'm looking for is a mix of how well they fit into the game they're guest appearing in, as well as the impact that the inclusion had on either the game or the guest character's game, and the meaning behind the inclusion. And I'm looking at one game per franchise, so franchises like Mortal Kombat, Tekken, Smash Bros, or Dead or Alive, to name a few, have a long list of guest characters, but I can only pick one character and one game unless the character appeared in multiple games. Without further ado though, let's get into this. Hi guys, DPX here, counting down for you the top 10 best fighting game guest characters. Now before we get started, you know what to do. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, hit the bell, leave a comment, or I will shock you. As in like electrically shock you.
I wanted to give to you, the last part of your notes here, the significance spiritually of the number 10 in the Bible.
Alright, so this might just be recency bias speaking right now, as at the time of me writing this and recording this, this was like just announced this week, but holy shit, Jason Voorhees is in Multiverses. First of all, this is the most excited I've been for Multiverses for some time as we gear up for its relaunch, or the relaunch might have already happened, depending on when you're watching this. But to throw in a character like Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th, an iconic slasher villain who doesn't really fit at all with the rest of the cast of characters, but then you consider that while Warner Brothers at one point had the distribution rights for the Friday the 13th movies, right now the ownership rights are all over the place. So how they were able to get Jason in a game where you can have him team up with Morty from Rick and Morty and take on the team of Bugs Bunny and Batman is mind-blowing. He's only at number 10 because this just happened, and everyone else on this list is a much better fit for the respective games that they are appearing in, but Jason Voorhees in Multiverses is a phrase I never thought I'd say. You may have noticed I mentioned Dead or Alive in the intro, saying that over the course of the franchise, there have been many guest characters. And there have been. Ryu Hayabusa from Ninja Gaiden became one of the mascots of the series. We also got characters from Virtua Fighter, guest appearing in DOA, and even a Spartan from Halo, for some reason. But to be honest, what is Dead or Alive best known for? That's right, the female characters and their jiggle physics. So what better character to include than Mai Shiranui from Fatal Fury? You know, the character who is not for good boys and girls of all ages? That aside, Mai Shiranui fits in with the characters of Dead or Alive for reasons, but even beyond her revealing outfit making her almost seem like an original character to the series, her moveset actually translates perfectly to the gameplay of Dead or Alive. It's also worth noting that Mai appeared in DOA 5, but was a popular enough inclusion to come back as a DLC character in DOA 6. That doesn't happen too often with guest characters.
So I'm going to be giving this flavor 8.5 out of 10 scoops.
Have you ever looked at lists of forgotten fighting games or fighting game franchises that need to come back? Or possibly even just video game franchises that need to come back? Chances are, one game you'll see on there is Rival Schools. This was Capcom's attempt at a 3D arena fighter, and a pretty solid one at that. We have teams of school kids and teachers fighting each other. Pretty neat. In the first game though, rival schools united by fate, I guess in an attempt to get more eyes on the new game, Capcom put in Sakura from Street Fighter, and she just fits right in. Similar to what I said about Mai in Dead or Alive, if I didn't know any better, you could have convinced me that Sakura was an OC in Rival Schools, as she has the look of a Rival Schools character. Not to mention her moveset fits right in with the rest of the characters, making her a perfect fit for this hidden gem of a fighting game.
36.
Very close, but that's not it. Let's go to Gary the Retard. What number between 2 and 4?
7.
So I just talked about Sakura from Street Fighter appearing in Rival Schools, but Sakura is not the only Street Fighter character who made a guest appearance in another fighting game. So I take you over to Akuma in X-Men Children of the Atom. This was, of course, an X-Men fighting game, and a very solid one at that, as it was developed by Capcom, the at the time king of fighting games. And the other cool thing is that they made Akuma a secret unlockable character, as is per usual for Street Fighter and Akuma. Not to mention, despite it being an X-Men game, which I feel like that should mean that any guest character would feel out of place, Akuma fits in very well. But most importantly, if we never got Akuma in X-Men Children of the Atom, we might not have ever gotten Marvel vs. Capcom. So even though Akuma in X-Men Children of the Atom is only number 7, this might just be one of the most important fighting game guest inclusions ever.
Okay, Mrs. Puff, what's my final score?
6.
Woo! So we looked at 2 Street Fighter characters in a row guest appearing in other fighting games, but I feel like it's rare we ever see a guest character in a Street Fighter game. Sure, we get a whole bunch of Final Fight characters, but like that is canonically a part of the Street Fighter universe, so I almost see them as like Street Fighter characters at this point. And yeah, we got Sakura from Street Fighter appearing in Rival Schools, but in Street Fighter V, Akira from Rival Schools made an appearance as a guest character, and just like Sakura in Rival Schools, she fits right in. It might help that Street Fighter and Rival Schools take place in the same universe, and a Rival Schools character was heavily rumored for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite at the time, but then all support for that game stopped, so we got Akira in Street Fighter. Once again, very shocking inclusion, as Street Fighter almost never gets guest characters, and maybe technically if Street Fighter and Rival Schools take place in the same universe, then Akira isn't really a guest character, but at the same time, she's a Rival Schools character making an appearance in Street Fighter. And most of all, this shows that Capcom remembers that Rival Schools is a thing. Now if we can just get another game.
Chills. Literal chills.
It was number 5. Number 5 killed my brother.
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
Mortal Kombat has a huge selection of guest characters. It started in MK9 with Kratos in the PS3 version and Freddy Krueger. Mortal Kombat X had a horror movie villain theme with the guest characters, as it included Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th, there he is again, Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Alien, and Predator. MK11 had an R-rated action hero theme with Terminator, Rambo, and RoboCop, along with comic book characters in Spawn and the Joker. And then the recent MK1 went with an R-rated superhero theme with Omni-Man from Invincible, Homelander from The Boys, and Peacemaker from DC. But that's a total of 14 guest characters, and I have to pick one. And this was tough, but I gotta go with Spawn. Maybe it's because I main Spawn in MK11, but he just fits so perfectly with the characters from Mortal Kombat. I mean, like, Spawn is literally a Hellspawn. Put him next to Scorpion, it's like it's meant to be. Throw that in with the fact that Keith David came back to voice him, and you got a great fighting game guest character with Spawn in Mortal Kombat 11. We go from one NetherRealm game to another with Injustice, their DC fighting game. I always had a soft spot for these games, but they too have a slew of guest characters. The first game had Mortal Kombat Scorpion, and the sequel had Mortal Kombat Sub-Zero and Raiden, along with Hellboy, who I considered for the list, but I had to pick the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I remember seeing this reveal live and being blown away. There was speculation of so many different guest characters, but not the TMNT, but they work surprisingly well. It's technically 4 characters in one slot, so it's technically 4 characters, but seeing how the TMNT crossed over with Batman before makes this an inclusion that makes sense and makes you think, yeah, how did I not expect that? On top of that, their movesets also make them fit right in with the rest of the cast, And you got my 4th favorite fighting game guest character with the TMNT in Injustice 2. Remember earlier when I talked about Akuma in X-Men Children of the Atom? Well, that's not the only time Akuma made a guest appearance in a fighting game, as he made quite the impact in Tekken 7. Akuma in Tekken 7 is not quite like any other character on this list, because with everyone else, the character was sorta just there, but not Akuma. You see, Capcom and Namco had an agreement that they were allowed to use Street Fighter and Tekken, you know. Out of that, Capcom made Street Fighter Cross Tekken, and while Bandai Namco were gonna make Tekken Cross Street Fighter, instead, they opted to not only include Akuma in Tekken 7, but make him a part of the story. It's not like he just makes a little cameo or you just fight him a couple times. No, he's an assassin sent to kill Heihachi, the series' biggest antagonist up to that point. I can't think of another fighting game guest character where they are this important to the lore of the franchise. That is wild.
What kind of pencil do we take again?
Number 2. Take a number 2.
Looks like you took a big number 2.
I don't think you can talk about fighting game guest characters without talking about the franchise where the guest character is often a major selling point, and that's Soul Calibur. Over the course of 6 mainline games and 2 spin-offs totaling to a total of 8 games, 6 of those games have guest characters, half of which contain 3 guest characters each. Some characters I considered were Geralt from The Witcher and Haomaru from Samurai Showdown, as they both appeared in Soul Calibur 6, and even though I'm not the biggest fan of Assassin's Creed, I think Ezio appearing in Soul Calibur 5 was a great fit. But I have to pick the one that introduced the franchise to so many people, and that is Link from The Legend of Zelda. We rarely, if ever, see Nintendo put their characters as guests in other games, let alone fighting games. So seeing Link in Soul Calibur 2 is almost like a time capsule to when Nintendo would do that, but it fits so well. If there is any fighting game that Link can guest appear in, I don't think you can get much more fitting than Soul Calibur. Plus, Link's inclusion introduced many people to Soul Calibur. The first game was an arcade game that got ported to the Dreamcast, a console that was dying. And even though Soul Calibur 2 was also on PS2 and Xbox, 2 consoles that sold better than the GameCube, you know, the console that Link was exclusive to, Link from Zelda is still big enough to get eyes on the series. Honestly, while not exclusively, I feel like Link should get credit for putting Soul Calibur on the map.
I'm a Luigi, number 1.
I feel like I might get some flack for this, but I think number 1 without question has to be a guest character, or third-party character as we call them, from Super Smash Bros. The series is considered a celebration of not just Nintendo, but video games as a whole. And there are a total of 18 guest characters throughout the course of Super Smash Bros, the entire franchise, which, did you even notice that? Did you even stop to think about that? That's wild. So if I have to pick one, it has to be very important. And I love the inclusion of every one of these characters, but it ultimately came down to Sonic and Sora. Sonic because of how monumental it was to see Mario and Sonic duke it out for the first time, and Sora for what that inclusion represents. And after thinking long and hard, I went with Sora. And this was one that I was won over on. I wasn't originally behind Sora being in Smash, not that I was necessarily against it, but I always counted it out from ever happening. Plus, aside from the first 2 games, I feel Kingdom Hearts is a little overrated. But after Sora joined Smash Ultimate as the final character and was announced to be the winner of the fighter ballot, it all made sense. What Smash is to Nintendo, and to some extent video games, Kingdom Hearts is to Disney. It's a true full circle moment for Super Smash Bros. I really dig all the other inclusions on this list, but when Sora was added to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, it was a moment in video game history that we won't forget, as ridiculous as that may sound. And that is why Sora in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is my #1 favorite fighting game guest character. So that was this list. What do you guys think? This was a list I kind of wanted to make for a while. You know, it was always like, well, I could make this list, but I don't really want to. But I could, but I really wanted to make this one because, yeah, there's just a lot of guest characters to pick because I just love fighting game guest characters. What do you guys think? Is there any that I left off? Would you have picked another Mortal Kombat character, another Tekken character, another Smash character, another Dead or Alive character, any one of these characters? Let me know down below. Anyways, be sure to like this video, come subscribe, or I will electrically shock you.